40 for Rateable Crest Titans.
The 2022 Britpart All-Wheel Drive Safari Championship, in association with Pioneer and Whitchurch MOT Centre, has certainly given us an action-packed season of off-road racing, with its fair share of thrills and spills along the way. And with 7 rounds under our belts now and 1 more to go, it would be a last attempt for many to get those extra points that could make all the difference in their positions at the end of a tricky season on that all-important championship leaderboard. But to do that, they had to get round the final course of the year back at Walters Arena here in Wales. And this time, it was wet. So let's get straight to the action and go and get muddy then. And the early lead of the event would go to Rob Bull and Bruce Mallet, the car performing well. But as can be the case with this venue, punctures would start to become an issue as the course started to cut up. Especially hard to see those sharp edges when they're covered in water and mud, of course. Second place at this early stage would be Lee Newcomb and Paul Harris. They hadn't raced in 12 months, so it was great to be back out and especially to be fighting at the top of the leaderboard already. Just 13 seconds behind Bull at this stage in the event and leading the way in Class 9. For Ian Childs, it will be third place for now. Not quite as close as the 2 up ahead, but still putting in some good times to extend a little bit of a comfort margin from those behind. Second place in Class 8 for his efforts as well for now. Stuart Williams would be out in the old car this weekend, but it didn't seem to be holding him back at all. Perhaps the mud and the water was a bit of a leveller here at Walters Arena. He ends the morning with the lead in Class 5 as well as 4th place overall. And leading the way in Class 7 will be Alex Freeman, a couple of minutes back on the overall times though, in 5th place. Scott Benwell was another of our early class leaders, this time in Class 6, just less than 45 seconds behind Freeman on the overall leaderboard as well at this stage. And second place in that class behind Benwell would be Leighton Dodds. 1 minute the difference, and that will be down to a run 1 time being a bit slower. Now that things were back on track, he'd be looking to get that sorted out and back on track in the afternoon. A new set of tyres was making all the difference, as can often be the case in weather like this for Morgan Box and Kevin Powell. Really helping with the grip, and a change in tyre size would help get the power down as well. They end the morning 8th place on the overall leaderboard, 2nd in Class 7. For Guy and Hemi Smith, it will be 2nd in Class 5. The pair had gone well all season, and this weekend was looking like no exception to that rule. Great to be starting the day inside the top 10. And here, rounding out that top 10, would be Jason and Deb Morgan. They lost drive on run 2, having to do the rest of the event in low drive. So they were, unfortunately for them, losing time stage by stage. 3rd in Class 5 for the pair at this stage, with an uphill battle and some major damage limitation to be done. Let's take a look, as we always do, at some of the positions outside of our top 10 leaderboard then. And it would be 11th place overall for Di Paul Hansen Phillips, in the familiar position of leading the way in Class 4 as well. There's just the 1 crew in Class 2 this weekend, but that wasn't going to stop them trying, as you can see from the way that Ryan Dunn was pushing that little Suzuki around, ending the morning 12th place overall. Kieran Jones, meanwhile, was chasing that Class 4 lead hard, but he had a little way to go yet. 46 seconds to claw back from 2nd place in the class, as well as 13th overall. Greg Finch and Andrew Mitchell, though, had a problematic morning, catching people on the stage and coming across course blockages, not really managing much of a clean run, it was fair to say. Nevertheless, they still managed to end the morning 14th overall, 3rd in Class 6. There were problems as well, though, for Daryl Hardy and Claire Goulding, the mechanical kind. A split in the air pipe and a damaged wheel would slow their morning's progress, but they were still going well in 15th place overall, 4th in class with those problems now sorted. It was a puncture on run 2, meanwhile, which would cost Paul and Nathan Kite around 3 minutes. But that wouldn't have made any difference to their overall position. They end the morning 16th from 3rd in Class 4. And it was like a repeat of the last time here for Margaret Bakewell, this time with husband Mike alongside. The wipers not working on the car again, but with some help from fellow crew Alex Freeman, they were able to get them going again and end the morning 3rd in Class 7. Philippa and James Tennant will be having a problematic run. The car not running on all its cylinders, and you do need them all. Sometimes stopping and restarting the car would give them a little more, but the main aim this weekend was having to get a finish for the championship no matter how many cylinders were running. And water was playing havoc with the electrics for Will Thompson and Tom Bryce. Easy to see why this weekend a misfire would cause them to cut out on run 4, losing almost 10 minutes from their time. Not the best of starts to this final round for the pair. For Rob Morris and Carl Box, it will be 20th place overall. They were enjoying the challenging course and these challenging conditions, believe it or not, ending the morning 3rd in Class 8. And this would be the first time we'd seen Pete Wilson in the driving seat on a competitive event. Mike Coward alongside, usually co-driving of course. Another to be suffering with water in the electrics, unfortunately, causing a maximum on run 2. But crucially, things did get better after that. Ed Smith and Philip Moffat had made more changes since the last round. That's more work on the suspension and more work on the engine, and it was showing. At least to start with. They unfortunately break something on a rock on run 3, having to call it an early day. Things weren't going exactly to plan either for Andy Kent and James Withers. They do manage to be lying second place in Class 9 despite their troubles, but that wasn't reflective of their overall position. 26th place, and with a maximum on run 4. And the problems continued this morning. This time it's Victoria Vaughan, one of those clearly visible on the car as she comes past our camera. Punctures aside though, it wasn't an easy morning, and ending it much further down the order than Victoria should have been was not a good way to end the first part of this event. So a gruelling morning complete here in Wales. Here's how the leaderboards are shaping up at this final round of the 2022 season. Let's head back out onto those afternoon runs, and we sadly lose Morgan Box and Kevin Powell from the fight. Their wipers failing, and they lose a wheel. Enough to call it a day on its own, but a noise from the gearbox was the final straw to break the camel's back here at Walters Arena. For Andy Kent and James Withers, it will be 21st place on the overall leaderboard to end a gruelling event, second in Class 9 as well. And while Greg Finch and Andrew Mitchell would technically qualify as finishers, they don't complete all of the runs. Engine failure on the final run of the day would stop them in their tracks so close to that finish line. It was a similar story for Will Thompson and Tom Bryce as well, an engine mount breaking on the car and causing them a maximum on the final run of the day. Not exactly the end to the season that they'd planned, nor the one that they wanted coming here this weekend, but things had gone well before this. Let's take the positives. Pete Wilson and Mike Coward had a much better afternoon. A tricky event to drive for the first time, of course, but things went well. They reached the finish with 4th in Class 6 from 18th place overall. The problems weren't over either for Margaret and Mike Bakewell. A throttle cable snapping on the penultimate lap being the final of their problems. Thankfully, with some help from Alex Freeman again, they had the parts to get it fixed and get to the finish to take second in Class 7, 17th overall. The afternoon runs would see Lee Newcomb and Paul Harris slip down the order into 16th place. 2 punctures on the final runs of the day, giving them a maximum and dropping them out of the top of our results. Philippa and James Tennant did what they came here to do though, dragging that car through the event to the finish, still having to stop and restart on the way round in order to try and get as much power as possible from that struggling engine. And in getting to the finish, well, they secure themselves a third place finish in the championship overall. Those efforts, they were worth it. With just himself, the clock and the conditions to keep an eye on in Class 2, it would of course be victory there as he crosses the finish line for Ryan Dunn, ending the event 14th place overall. A couple of issues had dropped him some time, but he'd be glad to get to the finish when many others weren't doing so. Paul and Nathan Kite would lose the wipers on run 5, but apart from that, he says, things had gone to plan for the pair. They end the event 3rd in Class 4, 13th overall. Rob Morris and Carl Box, meanwhile, were happy with a first in Class 8 finish this weekend. The weather had made it a bit of a tough event to get through, but they were pleased with that finish. Darrell Hardy and Claire Goulding, though, weren't happy with their finish. That's not exactly where they wanted to finish up. It hadn't been the most straightforward of weekends, of course. They'd be happy enough with that damage limitation to get 11th place overall, just knocking on the door of a top 10 result with that pace and taking 3rd in Class 6 despite the issues. We're on to the top 10 then, and it would be a 10th place finish for Jason and Deb Morgan. It was their first season and the pair had loved it, we're pleased to report. They'll be back next season, this time with a windscreen, after putting up with the conditions this weekend. For Kieran Jones, it will be 9th, a strong end to the event and the season, taking 2nd place in Class 4 with that result. 2nd place in Class 6 will be where Scott Benwell ends the event. It had been a while since we'd seen him out in the AWDC, and things had gone well this weekend, showing his class to get a top 10 in these conditions. Consistency, as we've seen all season, was the name of the game today for Paul Hansen Phillips. And it would be the Class 4 victory once again, securing him 2nd place overall in the AWDC Championship against some very tough competition this season. For Guy and Hemi Smith, it will be the Class 5 victory, also taking 6th place on the overall leaderboard. They'd done enough this season to back them a 5th place finish on the leaderboard. A great end to the year for the pair. And the Class 6 victory would go to Leighton Dodds this weekend. Another who had shown some good, consistent pace throughout the year, managing to get himself 4th place overall in the championship standings for his efforts. Alex Freeman will be leaving Wales with a 1st in Class 7 trophy and finishing just outside the podium positions in 4th overall as well this weekend. On to those podium positions, which are always hard fought at the last round of the season, particularly in these conditions. Things had gone well for Stuart Williams. It had been a season with a lot of ups and downs, that's fair to say, but ending on a high. A podium this weekend, 9th in the championship standings to show for his efforts as well. Meanwhile, not being in the hunt for any championship positions meant that Ian Charles was able to just go and push for a good overall result and show his pace. And he did exactly that, securing 2nd place overall in tricky conditions and among a tricky leaderboard this weekend. But taking victory not only this weekend, but also securing the championship title overall would be Rob Bull with Bruce Mallet alongside. They took the rest of the day with caution to avoid getting punctures, listening for every noise on the car, and did enough to secure them the win as well as that title. Hopefully we'll see them back next season with number 1 on the door to defend that title. So the final run is finished here at the final round of the season. Here's a reminder of how those overall times looked at the end of a very grueling day at Walters Arena. That does, of course, bring the season to a close. And with the points added up, we'll finish off the show with a quick rundown of some of the winners this season in the classes and the overall championship title fights. In Class 1, not here to compete at the final round, but putting in some fantastic performances throughout the season, it will be Mike Arthur, ending the season with some good points in that class. Class 2 would go to Jonathan Hartford and Daniel Drummond. There hadn't been many competing in this class, only a handful of events done, but it would be this pair coming out on top. For Ed Smith, it would be victory in Class 3. 3 maximum scores, helping to secure that win at the end of the season. And we've seen him in action at this final round. Of course, Class 4 was won by Paul Hansen Phillips. A strong run of 6 wins in a row, only missing out on a victory at the opening round. That gives him enough points to finish the championship overall in second place as well. What a strong end to the season. In Class 5, Team Tennant did exactly what they needed to do at the final round, securing themselves victory in the class and also taking third place overall in the championship. Class 6 in 2022 was one of the most hotly contested classes of the season, with a number of crews battling it out on the courses. But it would be Leighton Dodds coming out on top. 5 wins to his name and a number of other strong results contributing to that final result. In Class 5, Margaret Bakewell had done enough to take the class victory for the season, even with those issues on the final rounds. And of course, the main result would be the family battle, beating husband Mike after his season hadn't exactly gone to plan. Class 8 was a who's who of previous event winners and champions of various championships. But it would be Rob Bull who eventually comes out on top, taking victory in that class and indeed in the championship overall. In Class 9, despite missing some of the later events due to that engine going bang on round 6, it would be the class victory for Dave Hooper. A little consolation, but not making up for that fight to the finish that should have been. Maybe next year. We're on to that all-important final top 10 championship results rundown then. And it would be 10th place for Mark Hones. 1 win and a few podiums, not enough to get any closer to the top this time around, showing just how competitive 2022 had been in the AWDC. For Stuart Williams, it will be 9th. 1 retirement this season. And apart from that, things had gone swimmingly for the Class 5 driver. 8th place will be Team Liquid, quite fitting for this final round. A good end to the season with some consistent results. Greg Finch ends the year with 7th, finishing well in the Class 6 results as well. And despite limited time behind the wheel, Margaret Bakewell is a well-deserved Class 7 winner. 6th in the overall championship and rightly delighted. 5th place will be the DSR team, Guy and Hemi Smith. Hemi doing a fantastic job in her first season of driving and ensuring that between them they secured a good finish in the championship. Leighton Dodds, our Class 6 winner, would be our 4th place finisher in the championship overall. Just missing out, frustratingly for him, on a podium finish by a handful of points. So taking the 3rd step on the podium would be Team Tennant. Of course, they'd got a good championship finish previously, but this one would be all the sweeter, with Philippa taking on a lot of the driving herself. Consistency was the name of the game in Class 4, by way of multiple class victories, as well as placing well on the overall results. That was enough to give Paul Hansen Phillips the 2nd place overall result in the championship this season, and plenty of screen time this time out. And as you have seen already, our champion for 2022, richly deserved, is Rob Bull. A great season and a tough fight to the finish to take victory in that Lofthouse Freelander. So that's it for 2022. Plenty of differentials, suspension components and even engines on the Santa lists at the AWDC this Christmas. The championship will return in 2023 and we will be delighted to be there once again to bring you the action from every round. In the meantime, you can go back and watch any of the coverage from the previous rounds on our social media. Thank you for watching and we'll see you for round 1 in March.
Care 40 for Rateable Crest Titans.